welcome to the Yashi Show podcast. My name is Yasmin Madani, and my loved ones call me Yashi, and you can too. Today, I want to talk about something that quietly shapes almost every decision we make, and that is self respect. We hear the term often. It sounds simple, but when you really take the time to give it careful thought, self respect is not just a feeling, it's a practice. It's a way of showing yourself over and over again that you matter. So, what is self respect? At its core, self respect is the internal agreement that your needs, your feelings, and your limits are valid. It's the decision to treat yourself with the same care and consideration that you'd offer to someone else whom you care about. Self respect is about knowing your worth and treating yourself accordingly. It comes from making choices that align with your values, being honest with yourself, and not accepting less than you deserve. It's something you practice every day by setting boundaries, taking care of yourself, and not depending on others to feel good about who you are. When you respect yourself, you naturally make better decisions and avoid situations that don't feel right. It also shapes your relationships because people tend to treat you the way you treat yourself. It helps you feel more grounded, confident, and at peace with who you are. But here's the tough part. Self respect is not proven by what you believe about yourself, it's revealed by what you tolerate. And that's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are the actions of self respect. They are how self respect shows up in everyday life. A boundary says, this is okay with me and this is not. It's not about controlling others. It's about being clear with yourself and then honoring that clarity. But if boundaries are so important, why are they so hard? Because they often come with discomfort. And this is the part many people don't like to talk about. Choosing short term discomfort is often how we build long term self respect. Discomfort shows up when there's a gap between what you feel or need and what you've been conditioned to do. Maybe you need rest, but you're used to saying yes. Well, that was me. Go, 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 but I try not to do that anymore. Maybe you feel hurt, but you're used to staying quiet. That was me too. I dimmed my own light to make the other person feel comfortable and essentially internalized the hurt, which, if it was repeated again, turned into pain. In the long run, this can do so much damage to an individual. Maybe you disagree, but you're used to keeping the peace. And yes, I've done that too. It's when I would stay silent and then later wish that I had had the courage to speak up at the time. See, when you do something different, when you choose to honor yourself, it can feel wrong at first, even when it's right. So it's kind of complicated because that's the conditioning that I'm talking about. A set of normalizing situations and the environment that we grew up in. So when we have to go against it in order to prioritize our own needs, we don't because we don't think or believe that we can even go against it. And if we did go against it, then we were taught to feel guilty for thinking of our own needs. But also because of the discomfort that we feel in these kinds of situations. And that discomfort might look like guilt after saying no. It can look like anxiety before speaking up. It's the fear of disappointing someone and the awkwardness when you change a pattern. But that feeling is not a sign that you're doing something bad. It's a sign that you're doing something new. Self respect grows through effort, especially when that effort feels uncomfortable. So every time you choose differently, you are strengthening something within yourself. For me personally, this is what happened as I built up the courage to start this podcast. I was so nervous at first to try and do something different, even though I believed the messages that I wanted to share to help others. The idea of becoming vulnerable and putting myself out there gave me so much anxiety at first. I was not really out there visible on social media to begin with, so talk about change. What are others going to think? What will they think of me and my decision to do this podcast? What will my friends think? What will my family think? It took me 2.5 years of figuring what needed to be done and then finally having the courage to actually do it. That was the uncomfortable zone for me, but it was reflecting the new zone of doing something that I had never done before. And every week when I started releasing a new episode or put a post on social media, I would have so much anxiety and could feel the nerves. But deep down, I just knew I had to do it to be my authentic self. This work is so aligned for me and extremely purpose driven as a calling in my life at this time. And as an educator and coach, I have hope in everyone and all you listeners and your individual potential. I stayed in my discomfort because I wanted to continue to share the learning and this kind of work to support you in your journey of life as you build self love through self awareness. So even though it was difficult, I knew I had to do it. Let's take a look at an example that might be familiar to you. Imagine you have a friend who only calls when they need something. Every time you drop what you're doing, and afterward you feel drained, maybe even resentful. Without boundaries, you keep saying yes. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. But self respect asks, what does this pattern cost me? A boundary might sound like, I care about you, but I can't always be available on short notice. Now, here comes the discomfort, guilt, doubt, second guessing. But if you avoid that discomfort, you reinforce the idea that your needs come second. If you accept it, you begin building trust with yourself. There's a quote by Brene Brown that states, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. I want to repeat that. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. When she says this, she's pointing to something many of us struggle with. Setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable. It often means saying no, speaking up, or choosing not to meet someone else's expectations. And in those moments, we might worry about letting people down or being seen as selfish. But what she's really saying is this: choosing to set a boundary is a form of self respect. It's a way of saying, my needs matter too. Even if someone else feels disappointed, you're still honoring yourself. Without boundaries, it's easy to overextend, feel drained, or lose sight of what matters to you. But when you practice them, you create healthier, more honest relationships and a stronger sense of self. So the real courage isn't in keeping everyone happy. And wow, that was such an eye opener for me because personally, I truly believe that's what I was doing many times in my life, is just trying to keep everyone else feeling okay. And I'm sure that many empaths out there and people pleasers know exactly what I'm talking about. The real courage is actually in being willing to disappoint others at times so that you don't disappoint yourself. And if the relationship is healthy and the other person truly cares for your well being, then they'll understand that you need to care for yourself in that situation. And if they pull away because you are not pleasing them in the way they need, then that's ultimately what the relationship means to them, is that you meet their expectations, and it's a one-way kind of transactional relationship. So then that's kind of like an unhealthy relationship to begin with. So that's something for you to think about and consider when you do compromise your boundaries. Remember, boundaries are not rejection, they are self respect in action. And for some people, this is even more complicated because not everyone grows up learning what boundaries even are. In some families, especially enmeshed families, boundaries are blurred or even non existent. Children raised in these kinds of environments are often conditioned to be highly attuned to their parents' needs, emotions, and expectations. They may learn very early on that their role is to keep the peace, to please, and to adapt. And over time, something important gets lost. These children lose their sense of self. If you grow up like this, you may not even know what your boundaries are because you were never given the space to develop them. You might ask yourself, what do I actually want? Why do I feel guilty for saying no? And why do I feel responsible for other people's emotions? The answer is often conditioning. You were taught implicitly or explicitly, so whether that was implied to you indirectly or stated to you directly, that meeting others' needs was more important than recognizing your own. So when you try to set a boundary later in life, it doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it can almost feel wrong and even unsafe. And this is where that idea of short term discomfort becomes even more meaningful. Because for someone from an enmeshed environment where the family system lacks clear, healthy boundaries and where members are overly involved, emotionally dependent, and have blurred boundaries, discomfort isn't just awkward. It can feel like guilt for betraying someone. There's fear of rejection, anxiety about losing connection, and just a deep sense of doing something bad. But remember, in reality, what you're doing is something incredibly important. You're learning to exist as your own person, and that is the foundation of self respect. There's this quote by Rupi Kaur which states, "How you love yourself is how you teach others to love you." And this is really about the standards that you set both internally and in your relationships. At a basic level, it means that people often take cues from how you treat yourself. If you speak to yourself with kindness, respect your time, and set clear boundaries, others are more likely to follow that lead. But if you constantly put yourself last, tolerate poor treatment, or dismiss your own needs, you can unintentionally signal that this is acceptable behavior. It's not that people consciously decide, I'll treat them this way because they treat themselves that way. It's more subtle. It's your behavior establishes a pattern. So, for example, if you rarely say no, people may assume that you're always available to help. If you downplay your worth, others may not fully recognize it either. And if you allow disrespect, it can possibly become normalized. So, loving yourself in this context doesn't mean arrogance or perfection. It means valuing your time and energy. It means setting boundaries when something doesn't feel right. It means speaking to yourself with fairness instead of harsh criticism. And it means taking responsibility for your well being. The teaching part of this quote is so important because it suggests that relationships are shaped by what you consistently allow and reinforce. Over time, people learn what's okay and what isn't through your actions, not just your words. At a deeper level, this also connects to self belief. When you genuinely feel worthy of respect, and care, you're less likely to accept anything less. And that naturally filters the kind of relationships that you build and keep. So the quote is really a reminder that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. If you were taught to overextend, overgive, or overaccommodate, then part of your work is to unlearn that pattern, to show yourself and others that your needs matter too. Let's look at a quick example. At work, your manager asks you to stay late again without notice. Without a boundary, you say yes. You keep the peace, but slowly lose your time, your energy. With self respect, you might say, I'm happy to help when I can, but I need advance notice. It might feel uncomfortable, but what you're really doing is protecting something important. Remember, self respect, boundaries, self worth, these are not separate things. They're all a part of how you relate to yourself. And if that relationship was shaped in an environment where your needs were secondary, it makes sense that this work feels difficult. But difficult doesn't mean impossible. It means you're learning something new. So if you're trying to build self worth, don't just ask, how do I feel about myself? Ask yourself these questions instead. Where am I not honoring myself? What discomfort am I avoiding? What boundary feels scary but necessary? These are incredible questions that you can take some time to journal to. So I would recommend, if you would like to do that, please pause and do that. Again, these questions are, where am I not honoring myself? What discomfort am I avoiding? And what boundary feels scary but necessary? Because every time you choose discomfort in service of your well being, you reinforce that I don't abandon myself to keep others comfortable. My needs are not negotiable. I matter. You don't have to do it perfectly, especially if this is new for you, so start small. One honest no, or one moment of pause before saying yes, or one choice to check in with yourself instead of automatically prioritizing someone else. Because self-respect isn't built in grand gestures, it's built in the quiet courage of choosing yourself again and again. And over time, that becomes self-worth. So remember these takeaways. Self respect is an internal sense of worth that comes from living in alignment with your values, acting with integrity, and treating yourself with dignity. It's not something you achieve once, it's something you practice daily through your choices and your behavior. At its core, self respect means setting clear boundaries, caring for your mental and physical well being, and taking ownership of your happiness rather than relying on others for validation. When you honor your values and uphold your standards, you build a deeper sense of pride and stability within yourself. This, in turn, shapes how others treat you and supports healthier, more balanced relationships. Self respect also strengthens decision making, helping you avoid situations that compromise your integrity. Ultimately, it serves as a foundation for mental well being, protecting against low self worth and the pressure of perfectionism. I thank you all for joining me today. My newsletter will start up soon, and crossing my fingers that I can start getting it out there. So please go to my website, theyashishow.com, and get yourself signed up there to receive valuable and helpful information as you go on your journey of self-discovery. Remember, my name is Yashi, and I believe in you. Hope you'll join me again next week on The Yashi Show. Until then, be kind to others, and also remember to be kind to yourself.